The following program is a UNC Charlotte production.
Welcome inside UNC Charlotte. In this edition, we take a look at the ways the university is staking its claim to the issue of nutrition here on campus, in our research, and throughout Greater Charlotte. From there, a visit with a UNC Charlotte historian who's just revealed a discovery in the Holy Land that may be the most significant evidence to date from the earliest days of Christianity. The university continues to grapple with reductions in state funding and the need to raise tuition and fees. We'll hear the latest from Chancellor Phil Dubois. We examine UNC Charlotte's strong partnership with the Levine Museum of the New South here in Charlotte. That and more coming up inside UNC Charlotte. You and I are probably quite familiar with a tomato, but residents in some of our neighborhoods here in Charlotte don't have access to tomatoes or other fresh produce. Food and nutrition issues continue to be central in our national and local dialogue. You may recall recently federal policymakers declared that pizza sauce can be considered a vegetable by the National School Lunch Program. Next, inside UNC Charlotte's Lisa Patterson takes a look at some of the key issues with our experts in nutrition and health policy.
Over the past 30 years, American lifestyles have changed dramatically. One thing that hasn't changed? We are what we eat, and what we eat directly impacts every aspect of our lives.
We know that a strong foundation in nutrition, healthy folks are well-fed folks, and that's not just in terms of total calories.
Meet nutrition scientist and dean of the College of Health and Human Services, Nancy Fey-Yensan.
What you see in the United States in terms of food insecurity doesn't really manifest itself the same way it does in third world countries that are facing famine and other disasters. But what you see are undernourished folks that may look healthy on the outside, but their nutrient intake is so poor that they really do need a safety net. When your nutrient intake is inadequate, you can't learn, you can't engage in work, you can't seek work. So all of those things become really inextricably tied together. There are all kinds of costs associated with poor nutrition that we don't always think about, especially in terms of just the economic well-being of a community and the social stability of a community.
Our food choices are shaped by a number of factors, including abundance of unhealthy food, lack of nutrition knowledge, culture, high cost of healthy food, low cost of unhealthy food, not knowing how to cook healthy foods, taste preferences, and lack of easy access to healthy foods. Assistant Professor of Public Health Sciences Beth Racine was approached by the Mecklenburg County Health Department to study food access in the county. Racine's study revealed that more than 70 neighborhoods in Mecklenburg County qualified as food deserts, or low-income areas that lack access to healthy foods.
So over 72,000 people live in food deserts, which is about 9% of the population of Mecklenburg County.
Racine says the people living in food deserts have food stores, but the majority are stocked with calorie-dense, processed, and convenience foods, not the fresh meats and produce you would find in a full-service store. Robin Emmons, who is a UNC Charlotte alumna and founder of the nonprofit So Much Good, has experienced life in a food desert firsthand.
Well, growing up in a food desert, I really didn't know that it was a food desert. We didn't have language like that then. It just was that you frequented the neighborhood bodega or a corner store. You would go into a convenience store where there was some white foam bread and a pack of hot dogs. Luckily for me, I grew up in a family where my parents understood the importance of having something living and green on your plate and promoting health. So I got that lesson very early, and I was fortunate enough that my parents drove 30 miles outside of our neighborhood to go to the supermarkets on the outskirts of our communities.
Individuals in food deserts are at greater risk of becoming overweight or obese, which is a precursor to diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and hypertension. But overall, obesity has increased threefold in the United States since 1980. Bill Brandon specializes in health politics and policy. Brandon sees a role for federal and state government policy in the battle against obesity and lifestyle diseases. diseases that cost the state of North Carolina an estimated $57 billion annually.
Two different issues. One is we do want food as inexpensive as possible. We don't want to subsidize the consumption of materials that are bad for you. I think an important distinction needs to be made between offering people opportunities and suggesting they take those opportunities to forcing people to alter their behavior.
Experts agree that a holistic approach is needed to change health behaviors.
Researchers have kind of come to the conclusion that it's easier to change, for people to change their behavior if it's not only one person that's changing, if it's a lot of things around them that are changing. So in the nutrition research world, we're focusing more on the environment around people as opposed to just trying to change individuals' behavior.
A movement to address food issues is afoot in North Carolina. Nonprofit organizations such as So Much Good are taking on food access and education.
So the primary way that So Much Good is addressing that is by really encouraging self-reliance in these populations by teaching them to grow in whatever spaces they have. Secondly, we have a 5-acre site in Huntersville. We grow intensively on that site, bring that food into the community, sell at farm stands at cost, all local, all organic, working with the community residents to build relationships, to provide them access, but also to educate them.
Programs offered through the North Carolina Cooperative Extension provide customizable, evidence-based nutrition education to individuals and groups in the community.
My focus areas are specifically in local foods, food safety, and farmers market outreach. And we have a number of programs and curriculums that are evidence-based and research, founded in research, that we provide to consumers. Something that we just started at Extension is our Mecklenburg Friends of Agriculture program. Really, the intent of this group is to get locavores and individuals who have an interest in growing the local food economy into one room, so that we can then begin to network and learn what others are doing in the movement. And what we see with that group is that many of the individuals in that group have a real interest in bridging the gap of access between growers and individuals who are in underserved communities.
Through outreach, research and scholarship, and programs that train the next generation of healthcare and public policy professionals, UNC Charlotte is an invaluable resource and community partner in the Charlotte region.
I think that this college has a great opportunity to share its intellectual capital with community-based agencies who are in need of that. You know, these are grassroots agencies who share our priorities. I am so proud to be the dean of a college that I think has really high social and community relevance in Charlotte.
Healthy people are happy people. And what we're talking about at the end of the day is not a prescription of a set of values. You know, what you see as the grand end of life, that's left up to people. But the means for advancing those ends, being a healthy lifestyle, is not an ultimate end, but it is a step towards the way, and it's been shown over and over again, whatever you believe the ultimate purpose of life is, it's going to be enhanced. You're going to be able to get to it more easily if you're healthy than if you're sick.
Next, a story of remarkable discovery. UNC Charlotte professor James Tabor, who chairs the Department of Religious Studies, has uncovered archaeological evidence in Jerusalem that he says could revolutionize our understanding of the earliest days of Christianity. The discovery was made in a tomb unearthed during housing construction in 1981, but not explored until Tabor and his team recently undertook a unique excavation.
We didn't tunnel down under the building to actually enter the tomb. What we did was a remote exploration. It had never been done before. Robotic arm. So we were able, like travelers in time, to quietly enter an intact, undisturbed tomb, look around with the camera and film all the ossuaries. And of course, what we're looking for is names, inscriptions, any kind of identifying evidence that would make this more than just one more tomb. Less than 200 feet away from this tomb under the building that we just explored is another tomb that was excavated in 1980, 1 year earlier. It had in it 10 ossuaries, and they're all removed now and they're in the Israeli state collection. But 6 of them were inscribed with names, and the names have become very controversial because they're names associated with Jesus and his family. Our idea was if you have this tomb, and tombs are usually on family plots, and less than 200 feet away is a second tomb, unexplored, then it makes very good sense to check the second tomb to see if it sheds any light on the first tomb.
Well, let's go ahead and hear and see about the significant discovery.
This is the last thing we looked at, but it shows you in general what we were doing. You can see there the snake camera probe, and those are 2 of the bone boxes. And these 2 bone boxes in particular had engravings on them that absolutely rocked us back on our heels.
What did you see?
Well, what we saw, first of all, was a Greek inscription. This is the decorated front of an ossuary, but you can see between the 2 rosettes there are these, it's a 4-line Greek inscription, and it's fairly easy to read the letters, and we actually were able to sight read it on camera. And what it says is that the wondrous God Jehovah has raised up. The last word then we're still working on, but something like has raised up his Holy One, something about God raising up. And the word there for raise up is the word typically used in the New Testament for Jesus when it says he's been raised up to the right hand of God. So even though it doesn't have the name Jesus on it, this kind of epitaph, a statement about God raising the dead, doesn't occur on any other ossuary. Of the 2,000 ossuaries that have been found over the past 100 years or so in Jerusalem, 600 of them have inscriptions, but nothing like this. Actually 4 lines with a kind of belief statement of some type. We know the followers of Jesus did believe in resurrection, but we considered the possibility that this might be affirming God has raised Jesus from the dead, and if so, it would be the earliest testimony to faith in Jesus' resurrection, which is would be pretty astounding. And it was the next thing we found that made us read this back the other way, that it probably does refer to Jesus.
And that was what?
Well, what that was is a image of a fish with a stick figure human coming out of the mouth. And immediately a couple of us yelled out, Jonah and the whale. It's usually called the big fish in the Bible. Jews don't put images of humans or animals on these ossuaries. Like Muslims, they believe in no graven images of any sort. So this predates the Gospels. This would be oral tradition. This would be somebody that is part of the Jesus movement, that maybe even knew Jesus. This saying is being passed on. We believe in the sign of Jonah, the sign of Jonah. And somebody puts the sign of Jonah on an ossuary next to a Greek statement that God raises the dead. So if we do have a Jonah image, and I say if because this can be debated, but to put it on an ossuary and to have it represent then the resurrection of Jesus would be part of that oral tradition that seems to be circulating, that makes its way into the Gospels.
So, the significance in context of what you believe this to be is?
This is the earliest archaeological evidence of Christianity. Christians were Jews. Normally, you'd expect they would bury their dead like other fellow Jews, but here we have, we think, the beginnings of an expression of Christian faith emerging. Secondly, this is a recording, the sign of Jonah, in picture form of a saying of Jesus that appears later in the Gospel. So a witness to a saying of Jesus before the Gospels were even written, oral tradition. And finally, maybe most important, testimony that these people believed in the resurrection of Jesus, testimony to their faith in his resurrection. That's extraordinary, I think. I'm teaching at UNC Charlotte. It's not a theological seminary. I'm in a department of religious studies. We're historians. And I tell my students, because students come from all sorts of background, and some of them are very pious Christians in this area of the country, of course. But I tell them, first day, good history is never the enemy of proper faith.
The UNC Board of Governors' recent approval of a tuition and fee plan will mean higher costs for UNC Charlotte students next year. The university's combined hike in tuition and fees comes to 7.8%. That's one of the lowest increases in the system, and as Chancellor Phil Dubois explains, it does not fully address the university's prior fiscal setbacks.
Sometimes people say, well, you took the cuts and you're still standing, you must be fine. It's the things they don't see. They don't see the larger classes necessarily. They don't see the permanent faculty we haven't been able to hire. They don't see the research dollars that we could have had we added the faculty that we were entitled to by the funding formula. We lost about 170 faculty members that we never hired because of the budget reductions, and about 120 staff. They don't necessarily see the long lines for financial aid, or they don't. There are so many things the average person would not see as a result of the budget cuts because they drive by and they see the doors are still open. So it's a serious situation. We've been able to manage it. We knew this was coming 3 or 4 years ago, and we stopped hiring, and we just simply held the line on adding new people. I felt it was immoral to hire a person if we knew that a year later we'd have to lay them off, and that was the situation we were in. So we didn't do that. The cut we took this year was $33.5 million, about 16% of our appropriation, but we want to remember that cut, there was other cuts that came prior to that took us up over $50 million in continuing funds and millions of dollars in one-time funds. And so we had to deal with that. A tuition increase this year of 6.5% is going to bring back about $6.7 million of that 33.5. So I don't think anybody really expects or realizes maybe that the hole created was so large. And we were already one of the least funded institutions in the UNC system before this started. We've tried to keep tuition within some sense of balance. We know we would never get a 30 or 40% increase in tuition to get back all that we lost, but we have to get something back, and we have to rededicate some of it to financial aid. So in our particular case, we've tried to keep tuition just as low as we can, and in fact, we're still in the lowest 25th percentile of our peer institutions. At the end of next year, or at the beginning of next year, when the tuition increases go into effect, the total bill, tuition, fees, debt service, everything is going to be about $5,800. And if you look around the country, that's a bargain. I think if you go back to the early days of Charlotte College and the founding of the Charlotte Center and then the emergence of the two-year college, and the leadership provided by Bonnie Cohn, you have to just take great inspiration in where education can take people. And there were a lot of veterans coming off of World War II who knew they needed education. They were going to go out into the workforce, and Charlotte College provided them that opportunity. And that hasn't abated at all. In fact, if you look at the demand for higher education right now, it's never been higher. If you look at the predictions about what kinds of educational backgrounds will be needed in the next couple of decades, you'd have to say the future of higher education is extremely bright. What isn't bright is a very clear strategy for supporting it. And the notion of a public education, which for many years meant that people would go to school with no tuition or very little tuition and no debt, has now been turned a little bit on its head, so that it's almost a user fee. Now, it's nowhere close to that yet in North Carolina, because in our system, The state pays about 2/3 of the cost of an undergraduate education. But in some states, it's getting closer to 50-50, and students are being paid, expected to pay a much higher percentage of the cost of their education. I would hate to see us get any higher, but I don't yet see a strategy for getting us any lower.
UNC Charlotte has always had strong ties to the city and the region. 49er connections are everywhere, from thousands of alumni who live and work in our region to business and community leaders of every kind. Today we take a look at one such partnership with the Levine Museum of the New South.
UNC Charlotte has been continually looking for ways where we can integrate the work that we do and the resources that we have into the community. And the Levine Museum of the New South has come up as a very natural partner for us and a place where we feel like we can be a resource. And that matters, that an institution like ourselves finds ways to provide everyday dialogue and resources back into the community. This has been a way to expand the minds of our students through the opportunities that they have touring the exhibits, and as well as the community getting to know who we are and the caliber of folks that we have here at the institution teaching.
Because UNC Charlotte is the region's research university, and because we define ourselves as not just a research university, but as an urban research university, we hire faculty who have great expertise in things that relate to the problems and needs of this community. The university, of course, has been involved with the Levine Museum of the South since it was first born. More recently, I think the partnership has really deepened. Our faculty have not just contributed to the conversations that have taken place at the Levine, where we've discussed issues of great importance to this community. Again, education, energy, the environment, the role of the arts in the community, all of those things have been topics for conversation between the university and the visitors to the Levine Museum.
Well, Levine Museum of the New South and UNC Charlotte have had close ties since the museum's founding 20 years ago. Dr. David Goldfield of the History Department was actually a founding board member, and he, along with founder Sally Robinson and other founding board members, really selected the name of the museum, as well as selected the guiding values that have really shaped how we deliver our mission every day: scholarship, education, collaboration, inclusion, and fiscal responsibility. And over the 20 years, we have presented a number of joint programs.
Last year, when Levine Museum produced the Changing Places exhibit, which was just a dynamite exhibit that really talked about the changing demographics of this region, our faculty from geography were able to contribute to the conceptualization of the project, but also we had faculty who evaluated the response of the public to the project. It's been fascinating for a group of geographers who are mainly academics to be able to see how their work can be represented to the public, and how we can engage a wide range of audiences, from children and youth to adults, in issues that are really important to them as professionals. It's also, I think, really important to see that we have tremendous capability at the university. I think sometimes, because we're at the northern edge of the county, people think we're in North Dakota. And in fact, we're pretty close, and we have lots of people with great expertise in a whole range of areas that are very important to the mission of the Levine Museum, but also to Charlotte as a whole.
Well, as part of the museum's 20th anniversary celebration, we have brought back our award-winning exhibition, Courage, the Carolina Story That Changed America, about the Carolina roots of the landmark Brown v. Board of Education school desegregation case. And a major aspect of its return is the creation of new courage. Where is courage needed today? What New Courage does is gives high school and college students the opportunity to voice their own views, their own opinions. It really provides the authentic voice of the next generation. And for too many of us, we don't hear that often enough. We have to know of our own past and experience the pain of it to make certain that it never happens here again. To me, what this partnership has shown is how you can move from outreach to genuine engagement, because the ongoing relationship allows you to build on the earlier success, and we become more effective, and together we can accomplish so much more than we could ever do singly. And not only benefit our institutions, but also create greater good for our community.
Thanks for joining us. You can visit us through the university website and on YouTube. We'll look forward to seeing you again right here inside UNC Charlotte.